Welcome to the Think Forward podcast, where we speak with futurists, innovators, and big thinkers. Come along with your host, Steve Fisher, and explore the future together.
Welcome back to Foundations in Foresight, a Think Forward series. I'm Steve Fisher, and today we're diving into something that might not seem like a traditional futures tool, but I promise you, it's one of the most powerful skills you can develop when thinking about what's next. I'm talking about empathy. Now, I know what you might be thinking. Steve, empathy is great for relationships, leadership, and teamwork. But what does it have to do with futures thinking? Well, let me tell you, if you can't imagine the world from someone else's perspective, you'll never be able to fully imagine the future. Because here's the truth. The future doesn't belong to just you. The way things unfold depends on how different people, cultures, industries, and even generations think, act, and respond to change. And if we only look at the future from our own narrow lens, we're missing huge pieces of the puzzle. So today, we're going to explore why empathy is essential for futures thinking, how it helps us see change from different perspectives, and how you can develop this skill to become a better strategist, innovator, and leader. So why empathy is a superpower in futures thinking? Futures thinking is about exploring possibilities. It's about looking beyond the obvious, questioning assumptions, and seeing opportunities where others see obstacles. But here's the catch. Most of us tend to imagine the future through our own experiences, biases, and expectations. Think about it. If you grew up in a major city, your vision of the future probably includes things like dense urban living, advanced public transportation, and tech-driven convenience. But if you grew up in a rural area, your vision of the future might revolve around self-sufficiency, community resilience, and the future of agriculture. Neither of these perspectives is wrong, but if we only see the future through our own lens, we're missing half the picture. That's where empathy comes in. It allows us to step outside of ourselves and consider how other people might experience the future differently. And when we do that, we start to see emerging needs, challenges, and opportunities that wouldn't have been obvious before. Now, how does empathy expand our vision of the future? Let's take a simple example: technology. For some people, technology is exciting. AI, automation, virtual reality, it's all about making life faster, smarter, and more efficient. But for others, technology is overwhelming. It's changing their jobs, making them feel disconnected, or even making them feel obsolete. If we only look at the future of technology from the perspective of enthusiastic early adopters, we might assume that everyone wants more automation, more AI, and more connectivity. But if we take a moment to empathize with people who are skeptical or even fearful of these changes, we might realize that there's an entirely different future unfolding alongside the one we expect. That's why some of the best innovations don't just push technology forward. They bring people along with it. The most successful companies, policies, and products take into account both excitement and resistance. They don't just assume people will adapt. They build futures that people want to be part of. So how do we actually apply empathy to futures thinking? How do we move beyond our own perspective and consider futures that look different from our own expectations? One of the best tools for this is persona-based futures exploration. Start by identifying different groups of people, different generations, different professions, different socioeconomic backgrounds. Then ask yourself, how might they experience the future differently? Let's say you're thinking about the future of remote work. Instead of just imagining how you would like it to evolve, think about things like a young professional entering the workforce. What do they need? Or a mid-career parent balancing work and family, what are their biggest concerns? Or someone nearing retirement, how does remote work impact them? By stepping into different perspectives, we start to see barriers, opportunities, and blind spots that we wouldn't have considered otherwise. Another great way to practice empathy and futures thinking is to seek out perspectives that are different from your own actively. Read articles, watch videos, and listen to podcasts from people with different lived experiences. Talk to people outside of your industry. Travel, if you can, to places that challenge your assumptions. The more perspectives we expose ourselves to, the wider our vision of the future becomes. There is a danger in ignoring empathy in futures thinking. Now, what happens if we don't do this? What happens if we just assume that our version of the future is the version of the future? Well, history is full of examples of people who got the future wrong because they didn't consider how others might see it differently. Take the rise of mobile phones. When they first started becoming popular, a lot of tech experts assumed they'd mainly be useful for business professionals, people who needed to check emails and make calls on the go. What they didn't anticipate was how they'd be adopted in developing countries, where landline infrastructure was weak. Because they didn't consider that perspective, they underestimated one of the biggest tech adoption curves in history. Mobile phones didn't just replace landlines, they leapfrogged an entire generation of technology in parts of the world that were previously disconnected. Or think about social media. It was designed as a way to connect people, share ideas, and democratize content. But what many tech companies failed to consider was how it could also be used for misinformation, manipulation, and polarization. They built platforms assuming that everyone would use them the way they personally did, without fully empathizing with how different users might experience and exploit them. The lesson here? The future doesn't unfold the same way for everyone, and if we don't practice empathy, we risk missing the full picture. Empathy isn't just a soft skill, it's a strategic advantage. If you can imagine the future from multiple perspectives, you'll be able to anticipate change better, design solutions that actually work, and create futures that are more inclusive, resilient, and adaptable. So here's my challenge for you. Over the next few days, pick a future scenario. Maybe it's AI, the future of education, climate change, or something else that interests you. Then ask yourself, how would different people experience that future? How would it feel for someone in a different generation, a different country, a different career path? And if you want to take it further, have a conversation with someone outside of your usual bubble. Ask them how they see the future. Listen, not to respond, but to understand. Because the more perspectives you consider, the better equipped you'll be to navigate the future when it arrives. That's it for today's episode of Think Forward's Foundations in Foresight. If you're enjoying the series, go back and check out previous episodes where we lay the groundwork for better futures thinking. And stick around, because next time we're going to dive into why challenging your own biases and assumptions is one of the hardest and most important things you can do to think more clearly about the future. Until then, stay curious and always think forward.
Thanks for listening to the Think Forward podcast. You can find us on all the major podcast platforms and at www.thinkforwardshow.com, as well as on YouTube under Think Forward Show. See you next time.